Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to share a story that will make you laugh, think, and maybe even question what true equality in marriage really means. It's about a man named Kehinde who believed that love should be 50-50 until his clever wife, Adanna, decided to teach him what real partnership looks like. What started as a simple dinner date turned into a hilarious battle of pride, patience, and wisdom. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this one ends. Kehinde had been pacing the living room like a restless lion in a cage. His hands clasped behind his back as if he were about to address the African Union. "Amara," he finally declared, adjusting his belt as though it gave him extra authority. "From today onward, we must split all bills 50-50, no negotiation." His wife of 4 years, Adanna, paused in the middle of painting her toenails. She looked up slowly, blinked twice, and then burst into laughter. "Kehinde, my dear, please don't play with me this night. It's Friday evening. I'm in the mood for romance, not for mathematics." Kehinde wasn't smiling. "I'm serious, Amara. This is 2025. Women are independent now. Even Beyoncé said you people should run the world. 50-50 is fair. I'll pay my half, you'll pay your half. End of story." Adanna set down the nail polish, crossed her legs, and gave him the kind of side-eye only African wives have mastered. "So, after all my cooking, washing, ironing, managing this house, and carrying your mother's attitude with a smile, you still want me to bring calculator into this marriage? Kehinde, are you okay?" But Kehinde had already prepared his speech. He cleared his throat. "Amara, my father paid everything in his marriage. Look how it ended. He died broke. I refuse to repeat that mistake. We must practice financial equality." Adanna clapped her hands 3 times, the traditional African clap of disbelief. "Equality? Equality? Then tomorrow you'll also carry pregnancy for 9 months, Abi? Push a human being out and breastfeed in the night, Abi? That's the equality you want?" But Kehinde wasn't moved. He had watched one TED Talk on gender equality last week and now considered himself a philosopher. He stood tall and announced, "We start today. Tonight we're going out for dinner, and when the bill comes, Amara, be ready." 2 hours later, Kehinde and Adanna walked into the Royal Palm, one of the most expensive restaurants in Abuja. Everything smelled of sophistication, candles on the tables, a pianist playing soft tunes, waiters gliding like ballerinas. Kehinde puffed out his chest, feeling like a big man. He had invited Adanna here to prove his point. "Good evening, sir and madam," a waiter greeted. Kehinde smiled proudly and whispered to his wife, "See, this is the life we deserve. Luxury, elegance, but on a 50-50 budget." Adanna forced a smile. In her mind, she was already plotting a master plan. They sat at a corner table by the window. The waiter handed them menus as thick as textbooks. Kehinde cleared his throat and said, "Order whatever you like, my dear. Tonight is special." Adanna raised an eyebrow. "Whatever I like?" "Yes," Kehinde replied confidently. "No limits. Remember, 50-50 equals freedom." Adanna opened the menu and her eyes widened. "Kehinde, this lobster here is 85,000 naira for just 1 plate." "Exactly," Kehinde said proudly. "That's why it's a fine dining experience. Don't be afraid, choose." Adanna smiled sweetly. "In that case, we'll take 4 lobsters, the jumbo prawns, the grilled tilapia, and a bottle of champagne. Please bring your most expensive one." The waiter nearly dropped his pen. "Madam, are you sure?" "Yes," she said, maintaining eye contact with Kehinde. "I'm very sure." Kehinde's Adam's apple bobbed up and down, but his pride wouldn't allow him to back down. "No problem, write it down. Anything else?" he asked, forcing a smile. "Yes," Adanna continued calmly. "We'll also take 3 plates of jollof rice just in case the lobster is not filling, and some suya for appetizer. And oh, your imported cheesecake for dessert. Thank you." The waiter scribbled furiously, looking from one to the other. Kehinde nodded like a man signing his own death warrant. While they waited for the food, Adanna leaned forward. "Kehinde, are you sure about this, your 50-50 idea? Because this restaurant doesn't look like it accepts pocket change." Kehinde scoffed. "Adanna, please don't embarrass me. I'm a man of principles. If we're doing this, we must do it well. When the bill comes, we'll both pay our halves like responsible adults. 15 minutes later, the table was covered with enough food to feed a wedding reception. Lobsters, prawns, tilapia, rice, suya, champagne, cheesecakes, the works. Other diners turned their heads to watch in amazement. Even the pianist paused mid-song to admire the feast. Kehinde raised his glass. To equality in marriage. To equality, Adanna repeated with a sly smile. They ate, they drank, they laughed. Well, Adanna laughed. Kehinde was too busy calculating in his head how much everything would cost. At last, the waiter returned with the bill on a silver tray. He placed it gently in front of Kehinde, bowed, and stepped back. Kehinde, trying to look confident, opened the little black folder. The moment his eyes landed on the number, his entire body froze. 347,800 naira. His jaw dropped. His eyes bulged. He almost fainted on the spot. He shouted, slapping the bill on the table. 300 and what? The entire restaurant turned to look. The pianist stopped mid-note. Even the chef peeped from the kitchen. Adanna leaned over, calm as ice. Kehinde, my love, is there a problem? Kehinde's voice cracked. Amara, this bill is astronomical. Adanna picked it up, glanced at it, and shrugged. Ah, this is not bad. That's just about 174,000 naira each. After all, you said 50-50. Kehinde choked on his saliva. 174 what? Yes, Adanna said sweetly. Equality, my dear. Let me get my card. She reached into her purse, pulled out her wallet, and carefully removed her loyalty card. Yes, waiter, please apply my 5% discount for regular customers, she said with a smile. Kehinde blinked. Wait, you've been coming here before? Oh yes, Adanna said casually. This is my favorite spot. Didn't I tell you? The waiter nearly burst into laughter, but Adanna wasn't done. She handed the waiter a bright pink card. Also, please, after applying the discount, put the bill on Kehinde's account. He loves to handle finances for both of us. A very responsible man. What? Kehinde screamed. Adanna batted her eyelashes. Oh, Kehinde, don't look shocked. You wanted equality. I'm giving you equality. My equality is emotional support. Yours is financial responsibility. Isn't that beautiful? Kehinde buried his face in his hands. He had been defeated, and that was only the beginning. If there was one thing Kehinde believed in, more than his so-called 50-50 equality, it was family meetings. In his mind, no matter the issue, marriage troubles, land disputes, or even who stole meat from the pot, a proper family meeting could solve it all. So, after the Royal Palm disaster, Kehinde made a phone call at 7 o'clock the next morning. By noon, both families had been summoned. By evening, nearly 30 relatives had gathered in his mother's sitting room. The atmosphere was electric. Chairs were arranged in a big circle. Aunties fanned themselves with church programs. Uncles sipped malt and cleared their throats like judges preparing to deliver verdicts. Children ran around noisily, and nosy neighbors pretended to stroll by the gate slowly so they could eavesdrop. At the center of it all sat Mama Kehinde, a woman whose head tie could block the sun, and Papa Adanna, a man with spectacles that magnified his eyes like two light bulbs. Kehinde stood in the middle like a lawyer about to argue a landmark case. My people, he began, adjusting his shirt collar, we are gathered here today because my wife has refused to accept equality in this marriage. Yesterday at a restaurant, she disgraced me before the whole world. She refused to pay her share of the bill. A loud chorus of, "Eng! What?" filled the room. Mama Kehinde immediately slapped her thighs. I knew it. I told my son before he married you that you only came for enjoyment. You want to suck him dry like groundnut oil. Adanna, sitting calmly with her legs crossed, simply smiled. The uncles quickly stepped in. Uncle Jide, Kehinde's eldest uncle, cleared his throat. He was famous for speaking in proverbs no one understood. My children, he began solemnly, when the crow cries at midnight, it is not because the sun has risen, but because the lizard shook its tail. Everyone looked confused. What does that even mean? someone whispered. Uncle Jide ignored the murmurs and continued. In marriage, if one hand washes the other, then both hands will be clean. Exactly, Kehinde shouted, seizing the moment. You see, Uncle understands. Adanna is refusing to wash the other hand. Adanna rolled her eyes so hard they nearly reached the back of her head. Auntie Ifunanya, Adanna's mother's elder sister, jumped up dramatically, clutching her wrapper. Ah, Kehinde, you mean to tell us that you took our daughter, our jewel, to a restaurant and expected her to pay? Abomination! In my 32 years of marriage, my husband never allowed me to pay even for pure water. Another auntie clapped furiously. Yes, oh, even my own husband, may his soul rest in peace. He would rather die than let me pay for chewing gum. And you, small boy like you want Adanna to pay for lobster. Kehinde held his head. Ah, aunties, it's not like that. We are in a modern world. Things have changed. 50-50 is fairness, Auntie Ifunanya gasped, staggering back as if she'd been shot. Modern world? So you want my niece to become a modern slave, Ann? This boy wants to kill Adanna with mathematics. Adanna sat like a queen watching a drama performance, sipping her malt and smiling faintly. At last, Papa Adanna, who had been silent all along, raised his hand. The room fell quiet. His deep, calm voice filled the space. My in-law Kehinde, I hear you. I understand that you want equality. But let me ask you, when Adanna cooks soup in this house, do you pay her salary? Kehinde shifted uncomfortably. Well, no. When she washes your clothes, do you pay her per shirt? No, sir. When she stays awake at night tending to your sick child, do you give her allowance for lost sleep? Kehinde scratched his head. Not exactly. Papa Adanna slammed his walking stick on the floor. Then why do you want to share bills with her as if this marriage is a joint business venture? Is she your wife or your business partner? The room erupted. Some clapped, some shouted, Tell him! Tell him! Kehinde was sweating. He pulled out his handkerchief, wiped his forehead, and stammered. Adanna finally stood up. Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Everyone, let me speak. Yesterday at the restaurant, Kehinde wanted equality, and I gave him equality. Do you know what I did? The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. I told the waiter to put my half of the bill on Kehinde's account, she said. Because in this marriage, my half is emotional investment, and his half is financial investment. That's the equality I believe in. The entire sitting room exploded in laughter. Uncle Jide shouted, Ah, emotional investment, what is that, Biko? Kehinde, you are finished. Mama Kehinde sprang to her feet, shaking with anger. Adanna, you will not disgrace my son like this. You will not kill him with bills. Adanna turned to her calmly. Mama, if Kehinde dies from bills, I'll use his life insurance to buy more lobster. The whole family screamed. Some laughed until they coughed. Kehinde collapsed into his chair, covering his face. His plan had backfired again. Instead of support, he had become the laughingstock of both families. But deep inside, Kehinde's stubbornness burned. He whispered under his breath, This battle is not over. Adanna cannot win. I will show her. And with that, the seeds of the next disaster were planted. For a few days after the family meeting, peace returned to the Okafor household. Kehinde acted calm, pretending that everything was fine. He smiled more, even kissed Adanna's forehead before leaving for work. But deep inside, a quiet storm was brewing. He had a new plan, one that, in his mind, would finally prove his point about equality. It began on a Saturday morning. Adanna was still asleep when Kehinde tiptoed into the kitchen wearing an apron that read, King of the House. He cooked a pot of watery porridge yam, burned the plantains, and arranged the table with too much pride. When Adanna woke up to the smell of smoke, she ran into the kitchen. Kehinde, are you trying to burn down the house? He smiled innocently. My love, relax. Since we are doing 50-50, I decided to handle breakfast. Adanna folded her arms. So this is your idea of equality? Poisoning me with half-cooked yam? He ignored her sarcasm and served 2 plates. You'll eat it because we're equal partners. You cook sometimes, I cook sometimes. Balance. Adanna looked at him quietly for a moment, then shrugged. Fine, eat yours first. He swallowed 1 spoonful and coughed so hard that his eyes watered. Adanna shook her head, went to the fridge, and brought out bread and butter for herself. Enjoy your equality, she said, munching slowly. But Kehinde wasn't done. The next week, he introduced what he called the household equality chart. He printed it on colored paper and pinned it to the fridge. It had 2 columns, Kehinde's duties and Adanna's duties. Under Kehinde's side, he wrote, water the plants once a week, watch news for financial updates, rest, mental recovery time. Under Adanna's side, he wrote, cook all meals, wash clothes, clean the house, take care of the baby, manage electricity bills. Adanna read it, blinked twice, and said softly, Kehinde, are you sure you're okay? He puffed his chest. Yes, this is equal division of labor. You see, I contribute financially. You contribute domestically. Fair balance. Adanna chuckled. So watching news is now a responsibility? It is intellectual work, Kehinde said, nodding like a professor. Do you know how stressful it is to stay informed? She didn't argue. She simply smiled sweetly and tore the paper off the fridge. Kehinde, if you like, print 10 more charts. You'll still wash the dishes tonight. That night, Kehinde did wash the dishes, though with loud sighs and muttering under his breath. He dropped plates noisily, hoping Adanna would feel guilty. She didn't. Instead, she started her own game. The next morning, she brought out her phone and said, Darling, I just sent you a message. Kehinde checked and found a mobile transfer request. N5,000? What is this for? For my contribution to the electricity bill, she said. Since you believe in equality, I'll pay half, but you'll also pay half for my new hairstyle. It's part of emotional maintenance. Kehinde choked on his tea. Adanna, are you mad? Hair is not a family expense? She smiled calmly. Neither is lobster. But here we are. Kehinde's jaw dropped. For the first time, he realized he was losing this war of logic. Every time he argued, Adanna twisted his own rules against him like a seasoned lawyer. He decided it was time to take drastic measures. The next weekend, while Adanna went to visit her cousin, Kehinde invited his friends over. 3 men who called themselves the Real Men Association. They sat in the living room, drinking malt and nodding in agreement as Kehinde narrated his marital troubles. My brothers, he said dramatically, this woman wants to control me. I am the man of the house, yet she wants to dictate everything. One of the men, Chuka, leaned forward. You see, Kehinde, that's why I told my wife from day one. Submission is non-negotiable. If she talks too much, I switch off the Wi-Fi. The others nodded. Correct. Another Kunle added, Me, I don't argue with women, I just walk out. When I come back, food must be ready. That's equality, and I work, she cooks. They all burst into laughter, slapping their thighs. Kehinde, emboldened by the support, declared, Yes, this nonsense will end. From today, I'll enforce the law in my house. Adanna must understand that this is not a democracy. They cheered like football fans. But when Adanna returned that evening, she found all 3 of them sitting there, pontificating about the role of women. She listened for a while, then clapped slowly. Very good, she said. Real men indeed. Since you're all experts in marriage, please, who among you is divorced? Chuka shifted in his chair. Kunle coughed. The third friend pretended to check his phone. Adanna smiled sweetly. Thought so. Then she turned to Kehinde. My dear husband, you want to enforce law? Fine. But remember, every king needs his queen, and no queen sits beside a fool. She walked out gracefully, leaving the room in pin-drop silence. Kehinde stared after her, speechless. His friends muttered excuses and slipped away one by one. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he muttered, Equality is turning into suffering. But his pride would not let him admit defeat. He whispered to himself, Let her win this round. The next one, I'll show her who truly rules this house. And that was how the final showdown began. Quietly, dangerously, like a storm gathering behind calm clouds. By the next weekend, Kehinde was ready for what he proudly called Operation Restore Order. His plan was simple, or so he thought. He would show Adanna that a man's word still carried weight in his own home. He woke up before sunrise, ironed his best native outfit, and marched around the house like a general preparing for battle. Adanna watched quietly from the sofa, her face expressionless. "Kehinde," she said finally, "why are you dressed like you're attending a village council meeting?" He smiled triumphantly. "Because today, my dear wife, we are resetting this marriage. From now on, I am the head. I will make decisions and you will follow. That's how God intended it." Adanna sipped her tea and looked at him thoughtfully. So you're saying I should stop sharing my opinions?" "Exactly," he declared, pounding his chest. "No more arguments, no more challenges. I talk, you listen. Equality ends today." Adanna smiled softly. "No problem, my king. Your word is law." Kehinde blinked, surprised by how easily she agreed. "Wait, really?" "Yes," she said calmly. "If you say jump, I'll ask how high. From today, you are the captain of this ship." Kehinde grinned, puffing his chest even more. "Good. I knew you would see reason." Then she stood up, adjusted her wrapper, and said sweetly, "Since you're the head, I resign from all responsibilities. You'll handle food, cleaning, and bills. As your loyal wife, I will simply obey." His smile froze. "Wait, what?" "Yes," she continued cheerfully. "You said no more arguments, so I won't question your decisions. You're the head, I'm the neck. The neck doesn't think, it just supports. Good luck, my king." And with that, she walked into the bedroom and locked the door. By noon, Kehinde's kingdom was falling apart. The baby was crying, the rice had burned, the sink was full of dirty plates, and the generator had run out of fuel. Kehinde tried to cook beans, but it turned into a black paste that looked like charcoal soup. He opened every window, fanning the smoke away while muttering, "Equality, my foot." By evening, Adanna emerged looking fresh and radiant. "My king," she said with a polite bow, "how's the kingdom?" Kehinde glared at her, covered in sweat and frustration. "You planned this, didn't you?" She smiled. "Planned what? I'm only obeying your leadership." He collapsed into the chair. "Adanna, please, enough of this drama. Let's go back to normal." She raised an eyebrow. "Normal like how?" "Like before. We share responsibilities, talk things out, work as a team. No more battles, no more experiments." Adanna's tone softened. "Kehinde, I've been waiting for you to say that." She knelt beside him, holding his hand. "Marriage isn't about 50-50 or one person ruling over the other. It's about understanding. Some days one gives more, some days the other. What matters is peace, not scorekeeping." For the first time, Kehinde's pride melted. He sighed deeply and nodded. "You're right, Adanna. I've been foolish." She smiled. "Finally, the king has spoken wisely." They both laughed, the tension melting like ice under the sun. But just then, the baby started crying again, and Kehinde groaned. "I'll get him," he said, rushing to the room. Adanna chuckled to herself. "That's my kind of equality," she whispered. From that day on, peace returned to the Okafor home. Though every now and then, whenever Kehinde complained about house chores, Adanna would smile sweetly and say, "My king, do you want to be head again?" And he would immediately reply, "No, please. Let's remain equal partners." Word travels fast in every African neighborhood, faster than Wi-Fi, faster than the morning newspaper. So it didn't take long before everyone knew that Kehinde, the self-proclaimed Minister of Equality, had finally surrendered to his wife. The story spread like wildfire. At the barber's shop, men laughed until tears rolled down their faces. "Ah, you mean Kehinde cooked beans that turned to tar?" one asked between gasps of laughter. Another added, "He said he wanted to be head of the house. Now he's head of the kitchen. Even the old women at the market couldn't resist discussing it. "Did you hear? Adanna tamed her husband without shouting," one vendor said, slicing okra. "That woman has wisdom," another replied. "You don't fight a stubborn man with anger, you use intelligence." Back at home, Adanna and Kehinde were finally living in harmony. Their evenings were filled with laughter, not arguments. He still teased her about her emotional investment, and she still reminded him that leadership came with chores. One Sunday afternoon, Mama Kehinde came to visit. She sat quietly for a while, watching them cook together, Adanna chopping vegetables while Kehinde stirred the soup. The smell of egusi filled the kitchen, and their soft laughter echoed through the house. After a long silence, Mama Kehinde smiled and said, "My son, this is the first time I've seen you cook without burning the house." Kehinde chuckled. "Mama, I'm learning. Marriage has taught me humility." Adanna laughed and added, "And I've learned that equality isn't about sharing bills. It is about sharing peace." Mama Kehinde nodded slowly, then said with a sly grin, Adanna, I knew you would win. You are your mother's daughter. We don't fight men, we confuse them." They all burst into laughter. Later that evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Kehinde looked at his wife and said, "You know, Adanna, I used to think being the head of the house was about control, but now I see, it's about balance. I lead where I'm strong, you lead where you're stronger." Adanna smiled softly. "And together, we lead with love." Kehinde reached out, took her hand, and whispered, "I wouldn't trade this peace for anything." From that day on, he never mentioned 50-50 again. Instead, he called it 50 for love, their little inside joke. And whenever neighbors asked how they managed to stay so happy, Adanna would laugh and say, "It's simple. In this house, there's only one rule. Whoever cooks doesn't wash plates." And somehow, in that small compromise, they found the perfect balance that all couples search for. And that, my friends, is how Kunli finally learned that marriage isn't about splitting bills. It's about sharing hearts. Sometimes the smartest lessons don't come from arguments, but from laughter and love. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs a good laugh today, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story like this. Trust me, the next one will surprise you even more. See you in the next story. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family so you don't miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart and comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting stories videos.